Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Very excited today as this is our very first episode, which I hope to be many after this point. I'm Art.
I'm Dana.
And welcome to Spirited Wrenchers. It is a brisk but beautiful 26 degrees here in Ohio today. And I'm glad that we're actually working inside where it's a little bit warmer.
Yes, thank God for that.
Yeah, indeed. So we'll still be able to tackle some things that we have on the long list of the many vehicles that we have. What are we working on today?
Well, today we're going to be working on the 2010 Forester, and of that long laundry list just for that car, we're going to start with lights today. Something
nice.
Kind of simple. We're going to swap out some old incandescent bulbs with new LEDs, and then we're also going to tackle a ongoing issue since we've replaced the OEM actual headlight lenses with aftermarket lenses. We've been having trouble leveling them out. So what we're going to do today is pull off that front bumper cover and actually level them manually using the mounting screws.
Yeah, and I think one point with the LEDs it's important that we need to fix is those aftermarkets have blacked out lenses. So the old bulbs really aren't as visible as we'd like. So we're hoping with these LEDs, that'll fix that too, and any oncoming traffic will clearly see that you're making the turns where you need to be.
Yes.
All right, you ready to get started?
Oh, yes.
Let's get out of the cold.
So thank you for joining us inside. Before we get started, I want to remind you, our viewers, that neither Art nor myself are ASC certified. So what that means is that the way that we do our maintenance and repairs may not be the way that you do it and may not be the way that your mechanic does it. With that said, step one of any automotive project is gather all the tools that you know that you'll need. With that, we have our clip removal tool, a Phillips and flathead screwdriver. We have a whole bunch of extra clippies. So clips are one thing that you can never have too many of, and some of these came directly from Subaru, others may be aftermarket. Really, you need to find whatever works for your vehicle. We have our actual bulbs that we'll be replacing today. So we have Ala Lighting. These are the amber bulbs, and these are 7443s. It's the same bulb as for the brake lights, which are also 7443. We've also got a 10mm socket wrench for the rear brake lights and rear turn signals. A clipper tool, because when we were installing my front bumper cover last, we improvised with some zip ties because we did not have adequate clippies. So always make sure you have extras on hand before you start pulling off anything that involves plastic clips. We've got a moving blanket for laying that front bumper cover down just to keep it from getting scratched and making sure that it doesn't get damaged in the process. And of course, latex gloves. So with that said, I think we've got everything laid out that we need for the job. Let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start with the brake lights because that's going to be a little bit easier than troubleshooting the front end. So in the 2010 Forester, the only way to change the brake light bulbs is to actually pull off the housing entirely. Some vehicles you'll actually be able to access through a panel in the back, but in the 2010 Forester and this whole generation of Forester, really, you have to pull out the actual assembly. So how it's held in place is very basic. We've got a couple different bolts here that are 10mm or Phillips. So we'll be using our 10mm socket on these. And after that, it literally just snaps right off in your hands. It's gonna be a little unnerving the first time you do it, but once you've pulled it off a couple times, it's pretty simple. Well, it should just snap off in your hand. Sometimes they do give you a little bit of trouble because there's some plastic clips on the side. There we go. All right, so what you can see now is our actual bulbs are housed behind these brackets, and we have the actual wiring harness in here. You can also see now that we've got exposed the clips that hold in the housing to the car. And one of them has fallen, so I'm just going to pick that up real quick and pop it back into place so we don't lose that. All right, so the bulbs that we are replacing are going to be our top brake light bulb and our middle turn signal bulb. So the top one is white and the bottom one will be our amber. In order to undo the bulb, it's just a twist and a pop out. When you're actually replacing these bulbs, you always want to be careful depending on the bulb. Look up online and make sure that if you're not allowed to touch the bulb due to your finger oils, that you're always wearing gloves or using a handkerchief, a cloth to cover the bulb. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get my LED bulb that I'm going to put in this place. And so the top one is our clear. So that's going to be our Sylvania LEDs that we just bought. Go ahead and get that. And these bulbs are held in place by little tension brackets. So you can see there. The only thing you have to do is straight pull, firm but gently. Obviously you don't want the bulb to shatter in your hands. And swap it in with the new one. Installation is just the reverse. Put it in. And snap it back into place. Now we'll go ahead and do the other one. Ooh, this wiring harness is a little tighter than the other one. Actually, I'm going to undo this one, give me some more room to work. There we go. And once again, this bulb is the exact same as our brake light bulb. It's just amber in color. So it's going to come out the exact same way, just firm and gentle pull. And installation of our new lights. Don't judge me for this. I'm just having a little bit of trouble getting the right leverage to get that in there without breaking the light. And it's in. So once again, installation is just the reverse. And before we actually reinstall this back onto the car, what I'm going to do is give it a start, turn it on, maybe not start the engine, but turn it on and make sure that these lights actually light up so that way I don't have to take apart the entire assembly to get to the bulbs again in case I need to flip one around. Sometimes LED bulbs, when they go in, they're actually polarized in a very specific way. So if you put it in one way, top to bottom, and it doesn't work, pull it out, flip it around, and plug it back in. It's really just that simple. Anything? How about now?
Hit your hazards. All right, you got both turns working. Those working great.
All right. So at this point, what we've managed to do is we're troubleshooting as we go along with these LED bulbs. So the brake lights with the LED bulbs are only turning on if the headlights are on. So based off of that alone, if I don't have brake lights without headlights, I don't think this car is safe to drive. So at the end of this, we'll be swapping these LED bulbs back out for the regular incandescents and either trying a different bulb brand or doing some more troubleshooting and research online on our own. But what I want to show you is here. Remember how I was saying earlier that sometimes you just have to pull the plug out and invert it? LEDs are very finicky when it comes to having to plug it in. So this is not the correct way. If I pull it out, invert it, and plug it back in, boom, it lights right up. Amazing. And now you can see we've got very bright, very clear turn signals on the rear. Very happy with how the turn signals turned out. Not so happy with how the brake lights turned out. So I think what we're gonna end up doing is trying a different bulb brand, probably ordering more of the Ala lighting bulbs that are clear to go into the brake light plugs, and then returning these Sylvania from where we purchased them. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is gonna swap out these LED brake light bulbs back for the original incandescents. Again, safety first. Don't just immediately throw out your incandescent bulbs until you know for sure that the LED bulbs you've purchased function for your vehicle. And now we're actually going to put the assemblies back in because we're done back here. And you want to line up as best you can these clips when you're installing it. So not just, and it's pretty good to get a good eye for it when you're back here. And it just slides right in. Then we're just going to put our screws back in place. It's always a good idea to get your screws started with your fingers. That way you can feel the threads grab and you can be sure that you're not cross-threading your screws or your bolts. If you cross-thread those things, they are a nightmare to get back off again. All right, and now that we're done in the rear with our turn signal bulbs in the back and our brake light bulbs are reverted back to the original incandescents, which is not the point of today's video, but safety first. Well, let's move around to the front.
Okay, we've moved on to the front of the Forester now, and what we're going to end up doing is taking off the front clip. It's also good that we're having to do this because for these lenses, it's damn near impossible to be able to reach in and replace the corner turn signal bulbs. So we'll need to actually end up taking the full housing out anyway, so it kind of works out. Here on the top of the bumper itself, you have a total of 6 clips. So one here, 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 and here that we need to go ahead and remove. So you could use one of the pry tools or a flat tip screwdriver that we typically use. This one here is the exact same size as the little grooves in the popper here. So you just push it in, usually move it back and forth just a tad in order to squeeze it up. And then some of these are just ornery as hell and don't really want to pop up. So I'll just leave them there to keep from breaking any of them. And I'll move to the next one. You hear it pop a little bit, and this one popped up a lot easier. You want to make sure that you just kind of put these in an area where you're not going to lose them. So I'll put these over on top of the battery for now. I'll move on to the next one. Once again, I'm not going to break it. I'll move on to the next one. See if any of these come up a lot easier. If not, no big deal. All right, that one came up a little bit easier. We can go ahead and move down below because we'll actually have 6 more of these pop tabs underneath the bumper that we got to pull out in order to separate it off the vehicle itself. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We have one right inside the mud flap, and then you have a retaining clip here. You have another retaining clip over on that side, and one more that we'll end up having to pop out to get this done. So I'm going to go ahead and put down the pointer, slide it out of the way, use my screwdriver first, pop these out. Once again, I'm going to set it over here in the area where it's out of my way completely. We'll pop this one off. So I went ahead and grabbed my pop tool to pop these out that are a little bit more difficult. Got one here. Now, considering all the dirt and grime that gets in here from your driving, sometimes it's going to be built up around these clips, and it could make it more difficult to actually pop them out. So you may end up having to spray in some WD-40 or other type of lubricant to get some of the gunk away so it actually clear all the way. Although it's plastic, it still will lubricate it. Still will help get some of the sand and rocks out. All right, one other thing about these that are around the mud flap areas, outside of the regular dirt and grime that you potentially have, like here in Ohio, if you're in a cold area environment, you're potentially going to have snow, ice built up around it. This one was fighting hard, and ultimately when it did come out, it shot across the shop. So it did not want to come out, and because I had to chip away at a bunch of the snow and ice that was around it. So keep that in mind when you're starting to take these off. Dana had talked about improvising last time when we had the front clip off because we didn't have some of our major clips, and that is right here. There is a very small clip that goes. So we're going to go ahead and cut this off now when we're going to need to take the clip off. And because we have the proper clips that we can actually take care of that. All right, we're going to come back to these that were fighting us before and use our little tool to sit here and move this on out to get these out of here. This just gives you a greater leverage point than a little screwdriver does to get these out. A kit of various different types of the clip removal tools is fantastic, well worth its weight in gold, and easy to be able to take these out without breaking them. And I'll have to go back and pick that piece up. But thankfully it was not broken, it was just the actual centerpiece itself that fell out. Okay, so now that we've got all the clips removed, we can go ahead and start to pull this away. It's best if you have two people to really kind of help keep anything from touching the floor, scratching your bumper up. But in this case, I'm just going to be working on this. And Dana had mentioned having some type of blanket. We've got a moving blanket here that we'll throw on the floor. So that way, as I pull one side off, I can just set it down and move on to the next side without having to worry about holding it up. Now these will just separate here. Now, as we work across this wheel well, you'll have to use a little bit of force to actually pull it out because there are retention pieces in there that really hold on tight to the actual brackets. So as we move along the wheel well and we'll pull this away, you'll hear the clips release. You'll know that you're good on that side. Each way you move, just enough force just to pull it away, but not enough to where you're going to be breaking it. Just controlled force. All right, we'll pull this on away from the actual bumper.
Thankfully, I'm right here to catch it. So that worked out pretty good. And fortunately, these are incredibly light. And with Dana's version of the Forester, there are no fog lights. Had she had fog lights in here, the plugs would have actually kept this from falling the rest of the way on the floor. So this worked out pretty good. And these are incredibly light anyway.
And set this here, but we're going to roll it over on its face where it's a little bit sturdier. Okay, now that we've got that part off, we're going to go ahead and work on taking off the actual light housings. And same thing, we didn't have all the clips that we needed when we put these in, so we just zip tied one area. But we're going to fix that today. So we'll take that away. So now this should come out. This is held by one little retaining tab up top. You'll have to actually lift this housing up and then slide out. So this is that one little tab right there that I mentioned, and it goes into a hole right in there. If you try to yank it, it'll break that little tab piece off. Okay, now we're finally at the point where we can replace these bulbs. These are the exact same size and bulbs as the rear. And here, it's going to be this bulb housing that we pull out. As Dana had mentioned, you just want to grip the bulb firmly, pull away. We'll move it out of the way and then slide this one in.
Put it right back in, spin it until it finds the grooves where it will line up. It goes all the way in, and then just turn to where it's solid inside of it. All right, easy enough from there. And now I'm going to go ahead and slide this back in. Just got to make sure everything lines up in order for it to slide in, or it just won't go in right. It will fight with you. Like this one is here. These tabs up top, got to make sure that they are in the right location, or it's not going to go in where it's supposed to. All right, now that we have that in, we'll go ahead and put one of the screws in just to retain it in place. I want to make sure this doesn't fall off and get scratched up in any way at all. Okay, we'll finger tight that there, and then we'll move on to the other side. Okay, now let's go ahead and test them. The easiest way that I've found to test these is just hit the hazard lights, and it'll show all of them at the exact same time. All right. Success! Okay, so the only thing we have left to do now is just put the front clip back on. And the process that I go through with this may be a little bit different than others, but I prefer just to get it seated correctly up top and put in one push pin or push clip on each side, just in order to hold it there in place. Then I can go around and put everything back in the way it's supposed to. All right, I'll go ahead and start on this side. We're done.
Thanks for joining us on our wrenching adventure today. If you have any questions about the parts that we used in today's video, whether it be the actual bulbs themselves or the aftermarket lenses on the 2010 Forester, please drop your questions in the comments and we'll be sure to read them all and answer them accordingly. It's kind of cold out.
Just a tad.
You ready for that drink?
You're damn right I am.
Oh.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Come join us. Hey everyone, thanks for following us out of the shop. And if you skipped past all the greasy, grimy auto work, I don't blame you. I'd probably skip right to this part too if I could. With this being our first Spirit review, we actually wanted to keep it kind of local and close to home.
Down the road anyway.
Yeah, down the road. I mean, we reside here in Ohio, and this particular bottle really comes out of Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm pretty excited about it. And the name itself, just exciting.
I mean, it's a pretty standard bottle.
It is, but the full name is not. So today, we are going to discuss Evan Williams' Bottled in Bond. James Bond.
Not that kind of Bond, dear.
It's not?
No. It's Bottled in Bond. It's not James Bond.
Okay. So I dressed the part for no reason then. Oh well. I still look good. So Evan Williams, many of you have probably seen the names in many liquor stores across the country, and the name itself, which I really think is pretty cool history, and I'm a big fan of the history from each of these, is really derived from what many reports say was the name of Kentucky's first bourbon distiller. Now, we've talked about this, you've done some more research on it, and it seems to be a little speculative on whether that's really accurate or just what one side of history really says. So it's kind of a mystery.
The mystery exists because Evan Williams started distilling in 1783. Now, record keeping wasn't really big on their to-do list back in the day, so it kind of lost and reappeared suddenly in the 20th century.
Yeah, 1957, actually.
That was a good year for cars, wasn't it?
It was a good year for cars. Very good year. And on the Ohio River is where he kind of started distilling.
Yes.
So pretty cool. Right down the road, not too far from the house. And now Evan Williams, the name, is owned by Heaven Hill. Now, Heaven Hill distributes probably a good number of spirits that many of you are familiar with, everything from Larceny to Elijah Craig to Old Fitzgerald. And Evan Williams itself is the second most popular brand in the U.S. So
it's very common.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I've had Evan Williams before. I know you've had Evan Williams before, but never this variation of Bottled in Bond, which I thought was really, really cool. What exactly does that mean?
Bottled in Bond really just ties back to an old federal regulation that was passed in 1897. So once again, you're kind of going back in the day of spirit history in the sense that in the 19th century, there wasn't a whole lot of quality control with regards to what constitutes bourbon, what constitutes all these other different whiskeys and spirits. Bottled in Bond was a way that the U.S. government could guarantee a spirit's quality. So Bottled in Bond has to follow certain regulations. It has to be a bottle that, a spirit that comes from a single distillery. So a single distillation season, to be more specific. So you don't have this blend of, okay, well, in 1896, I'm going to distill this barrel batch, and 1897, I'm going to distill that barrel batch, and I'm going to take a little from this one and a little from that one. It has to come from a single season. It has to be aged at least 4 years in a government-controlled warehouse. I mean, we think Big Brother's spying on you now. Imagine giving them the keys to your bourbon house. It has to be bottled at 100 proof. That's another regulation for Bottled in Bond. Every single Bottled in Bond bottle that you see is going to be 100 proof. And it's also going to identify on the label exactly where that spirit came from, which distillery. And if it was bottled at a different distillery, they have to report that too. It all boils down to giving consumers peace of mind for the spirit that they're about to buy and consume.
Okay. So a lot of government overreach and monitoring and mess like that. But what does that mean for common folk like us, though?
Not a whole lot now in the 21st century.
So it's just something to draw the attention and make you feel, wow, this is different.
We are in the roaring 20s, after all. So really, a lot of distilleries are following those regulations, maybe not directly with the federal controlled brickhouses and 100-proof bottling, but with so many craft distillers out there and so many different bourbon distillers out there, a lot of them have some semblance of small batch or single barrel, and they follow almost the exact same regulations. So for consumers today, you don't have to find a bottled and bond to know that that spirit is quality.
All right. All the talk about it, all the work that we've done today, made me a little thirsty.
Oh, definitely.
You ready to pop this bottle?
Please.
All right. Well, let's pop this open.
So a little fun tidbit about Evan Williams as a brand is that in some cases, in a lot of cases, in whiskey societies, did you know it's regarded as the best, most affordable label?
Really?
In blind tastings, it can rival that of much more expensive spirits.
I didn't know that. Cheers.
To something new.
Yeah. Bond.
That is nice.
That's very good. That was very good. It's got a nice flavor profile, very little burn on the back end, very smooth, and although all of you will see us drinking just right out of the bottle in these glasses, I'm actually more of a whiskey ball person. I like ice in my whiskey. I like it cold.
It releases a different flavor profile.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tasting this, I can definitely see how people in whiskey societies will say that this is the best, most affordable. This has a flavor profile and smoothness that's up there with some pretty expensive bourbons I've tasted.
Yeah. And because there's very little burn, I would enjoy this just like this with no ice at all, and would sip on this for quite a while and probably have to fill my glass back up several times. This is
That
really
would be
good.
dangerous.
Quite. But that's where the fun lies.
Is that because you're bottled in bond?
Yes. What would your name be?
Oh no, we're not going there.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for the entire video. And if you, once again, just joined for this, hope you liked it. Share some comments on whether you've had the bottled and bond before, or what your feedback was. We'd love to read every one of them. You ready to call it a night? Sit back and relax?
I'm ready to sit back and maybe pour a little bit more.
I think I'm ready to lose the suit, too.
Is it a little toasty in there?
No, but it is relax time.
This is true. You
Yeah.
need to trade it up for a smoker's jacket. Thanks
Maybe.
for joining us.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.